Hi everyone, welcome to Module 4, Description. In this class we're going to do a little bit of a review and then I'm going to give an overview to the Introduction to Description of Resources. We're going to save a lot of material for the class and there's an assignment at the end. Remember last week we talked about what the three major elements, or we could talk about fields that were required across libraries, museums, and archives in terms of describing what a particular object or book or information resource in general is. We talked about needing a title, describing who the creator is, and giving it some kind of topic or subject. Last week we also talked about three processes in creating surrogate records. Description of the item using content standards such as AACR2, RDA, or FRBR. Subject analysis, which uses authoritative subject headings like the Library of Congress subject headings, Sears subject headings, and you will see on the Google Doc a description of what medical subject headings are about. The third part of cataloging, at least into an automated system of any kind, is to encode the data. In other words, these are the rules that tell you how to put the data into an automated system. And the major rule maker is MARC. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but mostly I'm just going to introduce you to what MARC looks like. You've done descriptive cataloging and you probably don't even know it. One of the reasons we talked a little bit about citations in the last class is that every time you write a citation in a paper, you are doing the same processes that are done for cataloging. You're describing that item, you're putting it into a particular content standard, you're writing the title in a particular way, you're writing the author in a particular way, you're choosing what parts of the title you're going to put in, how you're going to describe the publisher, and how you're going to put the date in, right? All of those things are elements for particular citation styles, and you utilize those all the time. So let's take a look at this resource, which is, of course, about Melville Dewey, the godfather of library and information science. So here's the book cover, and the cover gives us some information, right? It gives us a title, which we know is the title because it's in big letters, right? And we know what the subtitle is. It's in small letters. So even though it's not on the bottom of Irrepressible Reformer, you could tell that this is a subheading of the main title. And we know who the author is. We also get information from the verso of the title page, but look how much information we leave out. Okay? We don't talk about how it was printed or composed. We don't pay attention to who did the text design or the cover. If we were looking at this book as a work of art, we might be very interested in those kinds of things. But as librarians and as a bibliographic description, we can look down at this Library of Congress cataloging and publication data. And we see that Wiegand, Wayne A. 1946 dash is how the author is described here. Now, there's nothing in the book that tells you when this gentleman was born. You really need to look at a record for him that is created from his biography. These are called authority records, and we'll talk more about those in a couple of weeks. So then we see the title, and here it's very clear that A Biography of Melville Dewey is a subtitle of Irrepressible Reformer. Notice that the subtitle begins with a small a. Just like in citation, different citation styles, AACR2, the content standard for filling out a library record, tells us exactly how to write this title. It doesn't tell us how many pages there are and how many centimeters it is, because the cataloging and publication is not looking at the actual book. It's looking at a manuscript of this particular book. It has an ISBN number. It has some topic headings that are labeled 1, 2, and 3. Where do those come from? These are Library of Congress subject headings. And it gives us a possible call number. This is a Library of Congress number. And the one below it, 020.92, is a Dewey Decimal number. Hope you recognize those. So write a citation for that book in your favorite style, just to get a feeling for how you have to pay attention to all those elements that I just talked about. What did you have to know about it? That it's a book, right? Because you write a different citation for a journal article. You write a different citation for a conference proceeding. You write a different kind of citation for a chapter that's in a book. You had to pay attention to who the author is, the name of the publisher, and what year it was published. Those are the main elements of a citation. Your citation style might be a little bit different. Oops, that should say cataloging. Now let's think about cataloging it. What do we have to know? Pretty much the same thing. I meant to say on this record, this came from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I use this to, we still present our online public access catalog records. That's what this is. As if they looked like cards. And the title is considered the main entry. It's the main thing that people want to confirm when they are searching. Most people are looking for materials by title and not by author. So here's that full record for this particular book. Notice it includes information that are beyond what Taylor and Joudre said were the basics of description. It tells us what the language is. It tells us about notes that are included. It tells us what the OCLC record number is. So if we wanted to catalog this in OCLC, we could just use that record number and find it. It tells us the ISBN number. It doesn't look like an ISBN number because the dashes aren't there, but it is an ISBN number. That's that content standard. The content standard for the ISBN number says leave those dashes out. Okay. Here is the MARC record for this item. Notice all this gibberish at the top, leader, blah, 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 blah. That's basically machine language saying, here's a record. And each one of these numbers along the side is a way to encode the information that you're going to put there for the description. There's the 100 field, and that's the author. Here's the 245 field. This is the statement of responsibility. Notice it includes both the title and the author in these funny little codes, which are subfield B and subfield C. It has a separate field for the subtitle. The 260 field has the place, the name of the publisher, and the date. Subfield B, subfield C. The 300 field has that description. XX, 403 pages, 16 pages of plates, etc. Notice the subfields. Subfield B, subfield C. So why have these standards for creating a surrogate record? Both the standards for how you enter the information, how you do the description, and the standards for encoding. Why have those standards? Because of consistency, most importantly, interoperability. Interoperability is like the buzzword of the 21st century. We want to be able to share records across many different systems. In order to do that, things have to be encoded in the same way. And we want people to only have to learn once how to do things. And some libraries are still using them. We're going to learn about Ferber in the interactive class, and we'll learn a bit more about RDA a little bit later on in the course. I meant to take this out. We're going to think about that later. Ferber was developed by IFLA, and it really hones at that. What is this thing that we talked about for a couple of weeks? And it makes a distinction between three levels of 4 levels of description of a particular item: the work, the expression, the manifestation, and the item. Take a look at this great example of what Ferber is about, using Dracula as an example. I think it's one of the best I've ever seen, and I think it will really help you understand Ferber and the reading from Taylor and Joudre, the chapter 8. So those content standards, we've been mostly talking, I've been giving examples from AACR2 catalog materials. There's another larger, I shouldn't say larger, possibly more widely used because it's an international standard. Notice that it has a lot of the same categories of information here, a lot of the same fields. Notice that the first one, though, is content form and media type. We didn't used to, in the old cataloging standards, actually mark what materials were. We didn't say this is a book. We just said this is the title of something. And maybe down in the description you would kind of figure out that this isn't really a book, this is a DVD. Well, this content standard really makes that clear. Title and statement of responsibility area. Much like AACR2. Edition, material, or type of resource specific area. Notice the example here is the scale of a map. Material description area, number of pages in a book or number of CDs issued as a unit, publication, production, distribution, etc. A little bit different, but things are just kind of moved around and they're kind of separated out. That publication area is different than the material description area. I think this is an ISBD record. It's in German. Notice that you don't really have any difficulty figuring out what these things are, though. Okay, these field names are in German, but we know that Autor is probably the author. Titel is probably the title. This is the publisher information. It was published in München by a publisher named Hanser in 2012. It has 703 pages. It's got illustrations. We've got the language. We've got the ISBN number. Notice they wrote the number out both with the original dashes and without the dashes. They've only got one subject here. So my point to showing this record is that once you know what content forms are, you can kind of recognize a bibliographic record no matter where you are, what language you're looking at, or anything else, because these field names help us figure out what things are. This is another example of an ISBD type record. Again, that very first element is that it's a text. Unmediated means that it's not an ebook. We can tell the main title and the subtitle. We can tell who the authors are, etc. Most libraries are still using AACR2 as their content standard. These are the rules that were used in order to fill out the fields. And I hope you'll take a look, just scan over that chapter 21. Those are the rules of description for AACR2. But there are lots of different kinds of descriptive elements in libraries, archives, and museums. Content standards prescribe exactly where in the surrogate record certain elements must be described and what elements must be included. Element sets, and Dublin Core is an example of an element set, suggest what information should be included. Suggest, not require. For Dublin Core, for instance, you can include as little as the title for an information resource. This is a content DM record, that's the system, and its description is based on Dublin Core. And this is a student project from the class that I teach, LIS 644. There are lots of different element sets. We're not going to go into very many of them in this class, but I suggest you take LIS 643 if you are interested in metadata next semester. So you have homework from these pre-class slides. Go to an online catalog where you can see the MARC record. The ones that I used were from UNC Chapel Hill. Find a book, a DVD, and a journal that are of interest to you. Capture the MARC record in a shareable format and put them into a slideshow. Jing is my screen capture of choice, but you can also, some Microsoft products have a screen capture called Grabit. I think that's what it's called. I don't know about Macs. I don't use one. But you can you can do a screen capture pretty easily these days. And then put them into a PowerPoint. You should have 3 slides in a PowerPoint. Bring those to class, and we will talk about them then. Okay, so that's my little introduction to descriptive cataloging. We'll talk more in the interactive class.